Hey, this is Jeff, and today I have a follow-up to the sneak and detection in New Vegas video, answering a number of questions from the comments about scenarios I didn't test in that one. And while I was reviewing the comments to make sure I wasn't forgetting any, I also remembered that I said I'd release the Hunter S. Thompson outfit that I made for the thumbnail as a mod, which was like a year ago. So Bonnie Fluff, if you haven't rage unsubscribed because I was taking so long, I promise I'll do that in the next week or two. Anyway, I was having trouble deciding just how much information from the old video I should include in this one. On one hand, maybe you saw the first video and just want the updates. On the other hand, maybe this is the first one you're watching and you won't know what I already covered. So here's the 60-second summary of the first video, and I'll put a link to the description if you want all the juicy details. I created an automated test course to explicitly control lighting conditions, line of sight, enemy type, skills, attributes, perks, equipment, and any other relevant variables I wanted to test. Sneak skill, sound, and visibility all had expected effects on your sneak chance. Your Pip-Boy light has a big effect on visibility if it's dark, but less and less the brighter the area is lit. Some obstacles that block line of sight also block sound. Enemies detect you farther away in an exterior location than in an interior with identical visibility factors. Time of day doesn't matter, only the light level, so in the Mojave, sneaking at night is easier because it's dark, but in the Sierra Madre Villa, it's not because the light's the same 24 hours a day. Inventory weight doesn't matter, but the weight and class of your equipped armor both do. The broad daylight perk is completely useless. The silent running perk works as advertised. Enemies detect you at the same distance whether you're moving or standing still. And finally, there was a big surprise about what makes some enemies seem virtually omniscient, particularly the ghost people in Dead Money, which is what triggered me to do the analysis in the first place. An enemy's perception stat does make a difference, but their level is what really matters, and the level of most ghost people variants is set higher than anything in the base game, even Deathclaw alpha males and unique bosses. I think I ran slightly over a minute, but not by much. Anyway, that last point led to a question in the comments. Does the player's level matter? And oh yes it does. All of the tests in the previous video were done with Courier Max from the Skills Dash series, who was level 22 at the time, just because I had a convenient save file. I reran some scenarios at level 36 and level 50, and much like how enemy perception gets all the press even though their level is way more important, the player's level also has a huge impact. As you can see, with the same level enemy, at player level 36 with sneak skill only 25, you're about as hard to detect as you would be at level 22 with sneak skill 100, which sadly doesn't really help in Dead Money because the higher your level is, the game spawns higher level ghost people. As an aside, I had a comment on the perks video that took me to task for disrespecting the Fallout wiki, and in my defense, that certainly wasn't what I intended. I did make my own list of perks with secret benefits from scratch by looking at the game files in the GEC, but the wiki's an invaluable resource for these videos, and I use it all the time. So my apologies to anyone who felt like I was bashing it. I bring that up because I've also been called out a few times for referring to Bethesda's old GEC documentation instead of the Construction Kit wiki, which is separate and distinct from the Fallout wiki. The Fallout wiki is more about lore and gameplay than the under-the-hood stuff on the Construction Kit wiki. Anyway, sometimes I still refer to the Bethesda GEC documentation, even though it's not as accurate and thorough as the Construction Kit wiki, mostly just because I'm lazy. My bookmarks to APIs and such all point to the old one, and 9 times out of 10 it's good enough. But the comments had a good point, because that 1 time out of 10 will get you. In the first sneak and detection video, the discovery that enemy level is a far more important factor than their perception stat directly contradicted the Bethesda documentation, but the Construction Kit wiki had it right. And relevant to this update, on the page about detection-related APIs, it gives the whole detection formula, which, as you'd probably guess from playing the game or watching these videos, is a ridiculously long and complicated affair. The top-level summary is: detection value equals F sneak base value, which is a game setting, plus sound factor, which has its own complicated sub-formula, plus visual factor, ditto for that, plus detector skill factor minus target skill factor, both of which have different complicated sub-formulas, times F sneak skill mult, which is another game setting. And sure enough, target level minus detector level is buried in the target skill factor sub-formula. So, from now on, if I refer to the GEC documentation in a video, I'll use the Construction Kit wiki, not the old Bethesda site. Now, on to the next question from the comments. Does the silent running perk make running in power armor just as stealthy as standing still naked? I hadn't considered that exact comparison, although the scenarios I had tested implied it might be, but the results led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. As I expected, your detection chance while running in power armor with the perk is identical to standing still in power armor with or without it. And running naked with the perk is identical to standing still naked with or without it. But it turns out the relationship between armor weight and detection chance holds true even when you're standing still. Which, if the reason for that relationship is presumably that the more you're wearing, the more there is to squeak or clank and give you away, maybe that makes sense even when you're standing still, or maybe it doesn't, I don't know. Or maybe the heavier the armor is, the more you sweat and they detect you by smell. Anyway, the difference is fairly minor and only matters with low to average sneak skill. At Sneak 25, outdoors, standing still, no line of sight, enemies will detect you around 60 feet away in power armor versus 40 feet naked. Same scenario with Sneak 70 or higher, they won't detect you unless they literally back into you or turn around and see you, no matter what you're wearing. And silent running is locked to Sneak 50, so the answer to the question as stated is, if your sneak skill is just barely good enough to take the perk, you're not quite as sneaky running in power armor as you are naked and standing still. But if you bump your sneak up to 70 or so, you will be. Next question. Does the Pip-Boy radio make you easier to detect? Finally, a question with no unexpected wrinkles. Short answer, no. Having the radio on makes no difference. Maybe the game assumes you have earbuds or something. Next question. Does the Pack Rat perk help? Pack Rat reduces the weight of anything in your inventory with weight of 2 or less by half. That might seem like a head scratcher since we already established that inventory weight doesn't matter, but what if you have armor that weighs 2 pounds equipped and the perk makes it 1? Does that only affect your carry capacity or does it also affect the detection calculation? Well, at first I thought it did, but the back of my mind kept telling me the data looked sus. It took me way longer than it should have to realize the 2-pound pre-war casual wear I was testing with buffs your agility, which in turn gives a slight boost to your sneak skill, which was skewing the numbers. So I made a copy with the agility buff removed, reran all the tests, and after all that work, the results were a crushing anticlimax. The difference between 2-pound armor, 1-pound armor, and naked is less than the experiment's margin of error, so there's no way to be certain whether or not the perk was doing anything. But even if it does, the difference couldn't be much more than 10 game units, less than 6 inches, so it's nothing you'd ever notice in-game. And last question. Does having a plasma weapon equipped make you easier to detect? They do have a visible glow if you look at yourself in third person in the dark. Not as bright as the Pip-Boy light, obviously, but you might think it would make you slightly easier to detect. But it does not. No effect on your sneak chance at all from carrying a plasma weapon. And that's it. Next up, I'm finally going to do that 1-episode summary of the Fallout 3 Skills Dash series. I didn't make it clear enough at the time that it was a challenge run, not a tutorial, and I had to restart twice, so people found it really hard to follow if they were playing along at home. So I'm going to recap the strategy that ended up working for people who want to try it themselves. After that, I'm going to start work on the final cut of the Rise of Alexander lyric video. Speaking of which, I've done virtually zero cross-promotion between my two channels for several reasons, mostly because I suck at marketing, but I'm going to dip my toe in here. If you like this channel and think it sounds interesting to spend an hour watching and providing feedback on a first cut lyric video for my intentionally grandiose rock opera, go to the channel page, this channel, Belthan's Mods, click About, you should be able to email me, and I'll send you a link. The video description has a list of specific things I'd like feedback on, but high level, do the images provide useful context for what's happening in the story? Are there artwork issues that detract from the music, typos, or other issues with the subtitles, that kind of thing? I don't have much to offer in exchange for your time other than my thanks, but I guess I could roll Kickstarter style and put your name in the end credits. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.